Good evening around the world as you join us here at 5:30 a.m. on Saturday morning in Australia as Australia rises, as the sun will go up and the Australian public from Darwin down to Tasmania will wake up to the news that the most successful club manager of Australia has indeed been sacked. So tonight, I will firstly ask my esteemed guest to unmute. And
Hi,
hello there, and to introduce to my guests who have come together for this reaction that we have tonight. First of all, welcome back to Connor, the Economics. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Got a bit to talk about tonight, haven't we?
Quite a bit to talk about tonight. And a warm welcome back to our comrade, our good friend who has been dealing with a fair few issues with some builders. Leon, how are you?
Yeah, good mate. Yeah, I'm living in a house full of rubble and kitchen units and stuff everywhere. But other than that, can't complain. Good to see your beautiful face and nice to see you too, Connor.
Well, I don't think anyone has said to me I've had a beautiful face at 5:30 on a Saturday morning.
I realise he excluded me from beautiful face as well.
Well, that's right. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to, at long last, talk about the death of Ange Ball. Obviously, Leon, as I've called him, one of the Ange Undertakers. We may be joined by some other guests during the show, who knows? But tonight we are here to talk about Ange Ball, and what a contrast to just 2 weeks ago, where we had 215,000 people on the streets of Tottenham. Our coach was talking about how season 3 is always better than season 2. But unfortunately, as he himself predicted, the main character of season 3 is sometimes killed off. He never even made it to season 3. So, first question is, gentlemen, Connor, where were you when you heard the news today?
Just at home. Saw it pop up. I think there was lots of leaks, wasn't there, that today was finally going to be the day that Enoch and Levy and everyone else on the board finally made the decision. After, I know you said 2 weeks since the celebrations, but I think it's been a long 2 weeks of uncertainty, and actually finally finding out today, I think is a good thing.
And Leon, where were you when you heard the news?
I was on my yacht. I was in Monaco, and I was having a glass of champagne. I was sitting at home amongst the rubble. I had heard earlier this week that he had gone, and the announcement was going to be today. So I was kind of refreshing Twitter to see, after I told several people that he'd be leaving today, whether it would actually come true. So I was sitting at home. I wasn't surprised. Yeah, I think it's a good thing, but we'll discuss it more, I guess.
And so we've got, Kerry's in the chat tonight. She actually cried, but she's had some alcohol now, so coping a bit better. Obviously, seeing our beautiful faces, she might be hitting the alcohol again. And obviously, and it's good to see John in the chat, and hope you're feeling better. And John is really not that bothered that he's gone. So that's a comparison there to Kerry. So, I think the first question that you really got to ask yourselves is this, is that a lot of people have been changing their minds on this, but before Europa, and I think I know the answer to this anyway, before the Europa Cup final, were you both of the opinion that you had to go regardless?
Yeah, I was, and it hasn't changed. Unlike it seems 70% or something of the Spurs fan base, as you just alluded to, where it has changed.
Right, and Leon, you've been, I mean, you were Ange out even before Ange turned up.
No, to be fair, I didn't want him, and then I thought, kind of at the start of his first season, before a ball had been kicked, I thought he was brilliant. But really, at the end of last season, I think, had we not been through so managers in the years previously, I thought he was lucky to keep his job. We ended that season so badly, and not that this is a reason to sack someone, but I think the Man City at home game, I don't think he was in the position to be making the comments that he did. And then this season, I mean, I've wanted him out from early on, and kind of pre-cup final, my view was, look, it's two really poor teams, and it was a fucking terrible game, wasn't it? Let's be honest. But we won, and it was brilliant, and it was an amazing night. But I mean, for me, you can't get away from the fact that he'd lost so many games, the performances, the tactics, absolutely everything. So no, my kind of viewpoint pre-final was he's got to go, and now, you know, with all due respect to him, I'm pleased he's gone.
But I think it's worth remembering, gentlemen. Can I take you back to the halcyon days of just over 2 years ago? The stadium was rocking to fool's gold from Stone Roses. Conte had burnt down the house. Then Paratici's, one of his last acts, and we'll probably get onto Paratici later, was to appoint Stellini. We had the Romero and Lloris alleged fight in the dressing room. We then had Ryan Mason too, and best of luck to him at West Brom. And so we then went on a hunt that included the coach who liked to skateboard on his way to the training, Nagelsmann. We didn't get the deal done for a certain manager of Feyenoord. I can't remember his name. Do you know who that was?
No, I don't think it was any good. Anyway, so it didn't matter.
Connor, did you know who he was?
Arnie Slot.
Oh, him. Whatever happened to him. And so, you know, at the end of the day, that summer we brought in Scott Munn, who we may get onto in a bit, and we got in Ange. So the question really is, we had no choice.
No, look, I mean, Ange was whatever choice he was. A few years back, we had Nuno, who came in as 8th choice or whatever he was, and this is the way it is now under Levy and Enoch, isn't it? I think they've burnt through every type of manager that you can imagine. No, I think you know, on Leon's point about how early he was Ange out. I mean, mine was more recently, right? So I tried my best to give him a lot of time, defended him until maybe probably sort of the middle of this season. It was, you know, once I realised that the injuries excuse sort of run its course, and then Ange was I think everyone forgets that Ange was almost fighting with our own fans on a weekly basis, cupping his ears to our own fans. Everyone seems to have forgotten that. So I tried, and mostly I tried, to be honest, just because I didn't have the energy and I couldn't be asked for another manager rebuild, which Mark has just made the point, and we're back on another manager rebuild, and we're on I can't even keep up with what number manager it is under Enoch, and let's see where we get to now.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was a bit like, in a way, I felt that maybe Ange was almost like the Australian Nuno in a way, but lasted a lot longer, right? Now, I mean, there is, and we'll probably get into this a bit later. I mean, one of the wildest theories that there could be here is that we're looking to get another manager until the World Cup, and then the sentimental return of Maurizio Pochettino. What do you think of that wild theory?
I don't think that. Well, you never know with Tottenham and Levy. Literally anything is possible, but I don't think they're going to hire Thomas Frank and then with a view of keeping him for a year and then Pochettino coming back. I just don't see it.
I mean, it's an interesting theory because you've had Donna go as well, and Donna was the one who was speculated to be the person who vetoed Poch's return before, right? But that being said, I agree with Leon. I mean, particularly as the rumour is that to get Frank out of Brentford, we're going to have to pay, you know, an amount of compensation to Brentford. Obviously, I just can't see Levy doing that.
So so you don't think it's going to be Klopp? Not Klopp. Sorry, you think it's not going to be Thomas Frank?
No, I do. Sorry,
you do,
Frank. But I don't. What I mean is, I don't think he's going to pay that compensation to Frank to then sack him 12 months later.
I see. Fair enough. But I think it's worthwhile, if we can, just for 1 minute, if we go into, I think I'm quite keen to just have a look at so this is the club statement that was released today. And so basically the question is that, first of all, is that we'll be extremely grateful for Ange for his commitment and his contribution to his 2 years at the club. Ange will always be remembered as only the third manager of our history to deliver a European trophy alongside legendary figures Bill Nicholson and Keith Birkinshaw. But the board has unanimously concluded it's in the best interest of the club for a change to take place, and we'll get onto that as well in a second. But what is interesting here is that this bit that I've highlighted, it is crucial that we are able to compete on multiple fronts, and believe a change of approach will give us the strongest chance for the coming season and beyond. One of the toughest decisions we've had to make, not a decision we've taken lightly, nor one we have rushed to conclude. We have made what we believe is the right decision to give us the best chance of success going forward, not the easy decision. We have a talented young squad, and Ange has given us a great platform to build on. So I think the interesting thing about that is the line about it's crucial that we are able to compete on multiple fronts. So, Connor, do you think at the end of the summer transfer window last year, Ange was in a position to compete on multiple fronts?
No, is a short answer, because I don't think ENIC could give any manager a squad that has the ability to compete on multiple fronts. Even the best team that we've had in recent years being under Potts, he wasn't given a squad to compete on multiple fronts. The issue was always depth. So I think that's I think that's definitely clear that Ange wasn't, even though he himself at the start of the season did say that he did have the perfect squad, I think was the quote in one of the interviews. But no, I don't think they, and it's interesting, that statement where they say a change of approach to compete on multiple fronts. I wonder whether ENIC will heed their own advice on that and suddenly inject a whole host of cash into the playing squad. I can't see it, but
Leon, if I take you back to last summer, what would you have given that window out of 10?
5.
That's very generous.
But we don't need to go through the players. It wasn't a great window. We've spoken about this previously. I think it was done to reduce the wage bill. Manager came out and said it was a perfect squad. I don't think any sensible person truly believes that. What's he going to do? Come out and complain? You've got to go with what you've given. ENIC do not back any manager to enable them to compete in the league or multiple competitions. They just don't do it. Mm-hmm. But I do think, having said all of that, and as anyone who even vaguely knows me will know, I am no defender of Daniel Levy.
I've heard that rumour before.
Yeah, apparently there's some few things being said.
What was the turning point for you on that one, Lynn? You were quite recent on that, weren't you?
Yeah, it was just the other day. I went round his house, and anyway, I won't go into all that. But no, 2008, I've wanted him out since. But
sorry to interrupt you there. I would just sorry to interrupt you there. I just want to invite on Jack from North Carolina. Jack,
hello.
How are you?
There he is.
Hi, Jack.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very well. That you have an idyllic setting with the trees and the North Carolina summer behind you.
Yeah.
And I don't think you've met Connor before.
Oh, no, good to meet you, Jack.
Nice to meet you, Connor.
So we are now covering, I believe, 3 different continents as we discuss the sacking of Ange. So,
hi, Leon. How's it going, man?
Hello, mate. How you doing? You all right?
Good.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So, sorry, Leon was just talking about the turning point for him and ENIC, and then I'll come on to you, Jack, onto your thoughts on the sacking.
Yeah, it was 2008. But what I was going to say in terms of the squad that Ange was given, of course, it wasn't ready to compete on all fronts. That's just a given. That's how ENIC work. But Ange, he didn't play Spence until it was almost forced upon him. He didn't play Radu. He didn't really rotate the squad. I don't think he was making best use of his squad. in the early part of the season. And then obviously the injuries happened, and then we know kind of how it all kind of panned out. So although ENIC ultimately are always to blame in my mind as to how things go, Jack's giving me a little smile. I don't think Ange helped himself. I don't think he kind of managed the situation as well as he could, in my opinion. And I think that's the big reason why we're having this conversation and why he's not the manager of the football club anymore.
So, Jack, we were just talking about the statement, and we just had it up on the screen. Mm-hmm. And there was a line in there about the fact that we need to have a manager, or we need to compete on multiple fronts. And so my question was to Connor and Leon, was Ange given the tools after the summer window before this season to compete on multiple fronts? What was your view? What's your view on that?
Well, he was given the tools to compete, but not compete well. I mean, we had too small a squad and too inexperienced a squad, and then we can debate as to why we have the injuries that we have, and the new number of them that we have. That's always be a mystery to some people. But no, he didn't have the resources, didn't have the players, and I agree with Leon. We've talked about this off in other formats. He didn't help himself a lot, but I can see why he decided that prioritizing the one competition he thought he could win after, particularly the League Cup exit, was the decision to be made. Say, hey, I'm gonna deliver on winning a trophy, and so he made that decision to throw all those eggs in the basket. And that league form was probably worse than it should have been by a lot. But no, I don't think he had the resources to compete on all four fronts. You had to have prioritized at some point, and I think he did that. Whether he really got as much out of the squad as he should have, he certainly made the choice, and in my mind, it paid off in certain respects. He picked a competition that we could probably win, and it wasn't a great field. We got lucky with the draw, and some people getting knocked out, got through, played an abysmal game that I didn't care about one bit except for the result, and it was beautiful, and I'll remember that for a very long time.
Yeah, a lot of people have been saying, though, that the final was awful. The football was awful. But I do want to point out to all three of you, we had no creative midfield player. We had no Maddison, we had no Kulu, and Bergvall, who's not an out-and-out creative player, but he's been our best midfield player now. And in the Grumpy's Awards, which, ladies and gentlemen at home, you can watch on repeat, he was voted best player of the season, and he was also voted signing of the season. But there was indeed a certain pedant from North Carolina who said we didn't sign him at the start of the season, and therefore he shouldn't be the best signing. So Jack, what's your view on all of those things that I've just raised?
Well, I'm not blaming anyone. There's a reason why the football was bad, is because you had two teams that struggling to score and struggling to possess and struggling to do anything creative against each other. And once the fluke goal gets in, they're going to sit in and play deep and keep the ball out, daring United to score because they had limited options. So I'm not complaining about the football. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying aesthetically. I mean, it was better than the 19 final in Spain. I got to say that was even worse. Yeah, and I spent an enormous amount to watch that game because I flew over and watched it from the stadium. So at least this time I was just in my the Raleigh Spurs pub, the Irish pub that we gather in. So that was a lot less expense to watch what wasn't a great football game. But again, didn't care. I was on pins and needles the entire time, and just thrilled that we got it over the line. I don't care how.
So you watched the game in a kind of a Spurs United States pub, is that right?
Yeah. Our local supporters group gathers at an Irish pub not far from here.
Because you've heard that the Spurs Toronto club, the club wanted them to be identifying themselves as Spurs USA. Did you see that?
No, I missed that.
And so obviously we're not getting into politics here, but your president does want Canada as part of the United States. So maybe the club are ahead of themselves in their thinking. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would rather be taken over by Canada any day of the week. The reverse I'm not a big fan of.
Right. And so I think the point is on this is that obviously the point that they have made around the fact that we need a manager who can compete on multiple fronts is that, obviously we finished fifth last season. Sorry, the season before last now. We were knocked out the cups early. And obviously we played we all knew we were playing far more games this season. And so we shipped out a load of experienced players. You know, they weren't quality players, but they were that. And so I think he was left with a weaker squad. But I do think the point is with Ange is that he played his players till they got injured and then put on the likes of Spence. And Bergvall and Gray were not played until they were really needed. So that's I think that's something to bear in mind as well. I mean, the next thing I just want to put up on here for a second is the statement from Ange. Okay, and basically he has basically said that he wants to thank those who are the lifeblood of the club, the supporters. I know there's some difficult times. I always felt they wanted me to succeed, and that gave me all the motivation I needed to push on. It's also important to acknowledge the hard-working people at Spurs who gave me encouragement on a daily basis. And he thanked the players and he thanked the staff. Pretty obviously, no mention of the board, no mention of Mr. Levy. Do you think that ultimately Ange has been hard done by Daniel Levy and the board?
No.
That to me?
Anyone?
I'll defer to one of the other guests for a minute.
Yeah,
I
go
don't
on,
think
I'll
he's
answer
been-
that one.
Go for it, mate. So come.
Yeah, I think ultimately the right decision has been made on this, and I don't need any excuse to bash Levy and Enoch. I think ultimately the right decision has been made. I think, as per every other manager under Enoch's reign, he's been left short, and I think he's been hard done by in that respect. But ultimately, I think the right decision is made. You can't. There are some extenuating circumstances. I think Tottenham made this point in their statement themselves around the injuries and whatever else. But you can't. It's just impossible to defend 78 points from 66 games, or 44 points from 45 games. You just can't defend that for a team like Tottenham. So I think, and look, I think the other thing is that statement from Ange, I think, is well written, and I think is, well intentioned actually from him. And I think the one thing I'll give him credit for is in press conferences he never threw the players under the bus or the club really under the bus. And
he threw two players under the bus in 2 years.
Yeah,
Werner was one.
And yeah,
I can't remember the other one.
Yeah, but I think he generally, took a lot of the criticism on himself. But that being said, I think he's also a master of presenting and wordsmithing things in a certain way to support his narrative at that given point. And I'm sure we'll come on to some of that in a second.
Right. So, Jack, your thoughts?
Well, part of it is easy because you could say, okay, when was the last time you thought that this board made a really excellent football decision? How often have you seen them make a series of decisions that are part of a strategic plan that made sense, that had vision and was willing to stick with it? And so there's one reaction to me is say, whatever they decide, the opposite was the right thing to do. But I certainly can appreciate why everything Connor just said. I mean, there's no debating the facts of the league results. My question is, and this is not a criticism of anyone who has that view, because I'm still very divided in my mind. I've been working all day. I absorbed the news when it hit, but I just got out of work and it's just I'm still kind of processing. But the thought is that would Levy have kept him if he'd finished sixth but gone out to Frankfurt in the quarters? And I think myself, yeah, probably. And so would that have been the right decision? So, I mean, in other words, regardless of the results he got, I think they have to, if to have made the right decision, they have to determine that it would not have mattered what result, I mean, barring winning the league, but we all know that wasn't going to happen, that he was probably going to get sacked. There was no way it was around, because he won a trophy, got sacked, got fifth the year before, got sacked. So, I mean, I just don't know that I trust this organization to make solid footballing decisions, setting the team up for success. So I assume I just kind of default to whatever they decide is probably the wrong thing. But that's probably me just being overly cynical and harsh, and just kind of, because I'll betray my feelings, is I actually like Ange a lot. I think as a football man, as a leader, as a figure to as your face to your club, I thought he did an admirable job. He didn't necessarily maybe do a great job with the lineup all the time, tactics. I get all that, but from a face to the club and building loyalty among the players who are willing to work for him in the right situation, I think he did a good job. But I'm not going to cry a tear that he's gone, because that's the nature of the business. It's a results-driven business. But we fired managers for getting top 4 and no trophy. We fired a manager for getting no top 4 but getting a trophy. And I realize 17th is abysmal, and there's that speaks for itself. But I always say it's okay. What next? I mean, you're not going to announce Klopp. You're not going to announce Alonso. Who are you bringing in? I know who the favorite is, and I just don't know that flipping to that manager necessarily, if that's what comes in next week, it is going to change the direction of this club in any meaningful way whatsoever. And I feel like maybe Ange could have, but it's too late now for that. And then that's, as I said, I'm still processing. That's the reason why I'm waffling back and forth.
I was just gonna say, like, I've seen some, and this isn't, I'm not implying this is you, Jack, but I've seen quite a few comments say that, he's won a trophy and now he's been sacked. Like, he hasn't been sacked because he's won the trophy. He's been sacked because he's lost 22 league games.
Correct.
Finished on 38 points.
Yeah.
Which would have seen us relegated in many other seasons. He's mismanaged the squad. The team, for whatever reasons, had an awful lot of the same kind of injuries, and results really since November 2023 have been
abysmal.
I won't even say patchy. They've been abysmal. So that's the reason he's been sacked. And it is a strange kind of paradox in that, like, had we finished 10th and won, well, he probably would have kept his job. But going into the new season with a manager whose results over 18 months have been abysmal, regardless of winning the Europa League, which was amazing, or winning any trophy at Tottenham, which is amazing, I just logically, I couldn't get people saying he deserves the season. Why? I just can't get my head around it. Like, take the emotion out of it, but yeah.
Yeah, and the point is, most of them aren't saying he deserves the season either, though. They say, the answer for a lot of them, let's give him the first 10 games. They're that confident in him. They're willing to give him 10 games. So, it's just, either he's your man or he isn't, right? And I think we shouldn't be going into any new season ever thinking we're going to give a manager 10 games, because you might as well bite the bullet now, because otherwise you're going to have to hire a manager midway through a season. They won't have a pre-season. They won't have a transfer window, etc., etc. So I think it's a hard. But I agree with Leonard. Look, if we'd finished 10th and won the Europa, I think it'd still be in his job. So I think that sort of, I think that contradicts the argument that
What about if
just focused on top 4?
What about if Manchester United had ridden it out with the start of Ten Hag's season and kept him on to the end of this season? Do you not think the Ten Hag scenario has played heavily on Levy's mind? Because we all know that he reacts to everything, right? And do you think the ghostly spectre of Eric Ten Hag and the team that we beat with 27% possession in the Europa Cup final has been an influence on the decision now?
No.
Jack?
I think results over 18 months have been shit. Sorry, Jack, go on, mate.
No, go ahead, Lee. Yeah, just go ahead. Finish your thought.
Yeah. I don't think it has. I don't think it has. I don't think it has. I think it's purely the results over a really long period that have been poor, that have cost him his job. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I'll say the only thing that I think I tend to agree with Leon, and I'd say the Man United is a club that you can point to that makes even more appalling decisions than Tottenham when it comes to
and we've got a nicer stadium, of course.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, no question about that. I don't know if there's influence, but I think the risk of letting a trophy-winning manager continue his job is to think, oh well, he's finally figured it out. I understand that logic. I totally get it, and I understand why he's been fired. And it's just, I'm just curious that 10th would have been, I don't know where. I wonder if what spot would he have kept his job? You guys are saying 10th. Could it have been 12th? Would it have had to have been 8th? I just feel like these league positions basically between 7 and 17, other than the £3 million a place you get, doesn't really matter too much. Doesn't matter much. It's really the performances on the pitch. And I can understand why you watch that team in the league and the abysmal performances we saw, particularly down the stretch in the spring, are what cost him his job. I mean, I think that last home game was one of the worst exhibits I've ever seen. Second to last home game, right?
Yeah,
The Crystal Palace game.
I think on that point, I think I say 10th because, and I mean perhaps it's 12th, perhaps it's 13th, but I think with 12, even 12th or 13th, I think one could feasibly run the argument that we had these horrific injuries, you know,
Exactly.
everything's gone against us this season, but we've still had a good outcome because we've won the Europa. I think 17th, just psychologically, is so bad. And this just downward trajectory, obviously, of the team, the 78 points, the 44 from 45 games, is just too much. And look, I think what's coming to ENIC and Levy's thinking, you got to remember, Levy is by nature super cautious, right? And he's very risk averse and way too cautious. And I think what he's weighing up is, look, it's cost me already this season. Thank God this year we had the Europa. We're not going to be in the Europa next year. So we haven't got a get out of jail free card to get back into the European places. So I think his decision has been, look, finish 17th. I lost 30 odd million compared to the season before on Premier League prize money. I can't risk that happening again without this European get out of jail free card that I had this year. And I think that's come into his decision making, to be honest.
And so just let me, gentlemen, put an alternate view to you. And it's a very local view here. So this week on ABC, the Australian equivalent of the BBC, they had the Ange story. It was updated. And they had, you know, it was updated for the Tottenham story. So luminaries such as Max Rushton was on. He's down here. You had one of Alvin and the Chipmunks from We Are Tottenham TV as a talking head. You had the boy Hotspur on. You had Rory Jennings, who, if you don't know, is on TalkSport and is a Chelsea fan. But very much the mood. And even, and I know it's not important to this whole discussion, I had my bathroom light replaced. So I had a very nice Sparky and his junior, who was a Tottenham fan, and his dad's a Tottenham fan. So I said to him to watch the show. And his boss said to me, "Did you watch the documentary?" I said, yeah, I watched the documentary, you know. And he said, and very much the Australian view is this. And when the sun rises today, there will be pitchforks at Castle Harris, by the way, as I walk out to the supermarket wearing this, because they are going to say this: you haven't won a trophy in 17 years. There's 215,000 people on the streets. Who are you to sack him, the most successful Australian coach of all time? Can any of you help me for this difficult day that I will be facing? Silence.
Well,
I can give you one argument. It's not going to be that popular, I don't think. But
go on.
And I was in Bilbao, right? So I went to the game, and I don't want to diminish it because it was, you know, one of the best nights of my life. And as a Tottenham supporter, obviously it was amazing and it was a great eat. But how often have we been in tournaments where we are the favourites pre the tournament starting? That's the one point I would make, and I can't particularly think of another example. And so without diminishing the achievement, because it's still a great achievement to win a trophy, and they've been very hard to come by for us, and it's a European trophy and it's brilliant. There is context to it that, you know, we were also the favourites to win that tournament. It's not the miracle like when we got to the Champions League final and we almost won the Champions League, right? This was a tournament we were the favourites for. So I do get the point that we can't let emotion cloud our judgment as to ignoring all of the facts in front of us, which are those ones that I've already mentioned. And so that I think it's the right decision. But it's a tough one.
I will say that, I mean, I don't have anything for you there to talk to your countrymen, talk them down. I mean, other than the typical anti-Australian bias, but
or you're happy to encourage pitchforks at the gates of my home, I think is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean,
just as a principle.
I'm fine with. I don't fear pitchforks at your gate. No, I'm perfectly fine with that.
I thought so.
I trust you to make the right decisions there. But the I will say this for Daniel. I'm not as big a critic maybe as Leon is, but I'm certainly no big supporter of his either. But he has made a tough decision. He's made a very unpopular decision. He's made a decision that, or the board has made a decision that they really feel is in the best interest of the club. You don't fire the guy who's won your first trophy in Europe for 41 years, and that's not an easy decision. I thought the statement was well put together, whoever wrote it. And it is definitely a tough decision. And as you go online, we can all do it. It's not popular. I mean, maybe among the most thoughtful fans like yourselves, it's the right decision, but it is not seemingly the one that has been well received by and large, from what I can tell in my chat groups as well as just online in general. So I give him credit for that. That was a tough call. I would like to have done it a lot sooner, a lot faster, and I'd like to already seen the announcement of the new manager, and that better be coming really, really quick, because guess what? The window is open, for crying out loud.
So there you go. You have a fellow North Carolina resident there. I think the question is now, and before we get to who's next, so a question for you, Leon, is that the statement says, well, the statement, first of all, I don't think, if I just get this, let me just bear with me 1 second. I want to get the statement back up for a second.
The statement looks like any text. I know, not that one. You have a statement.
No, that's my sniffing abilities. You'll see here, I don't think it says Coy's data Dan at the bottom of the statement.
Yeah.
And it says the board has unanimously concluded, right? Now, in the context this week of our favourite dog-loving director, Donna Cullen, leaving, we know that Moby Tribute Act, what's his name again? He's gone. Scott Munn, in this anti-Australian purge that is indeed taking place at the club right now. And this is indeed my last day as a Tottenham supporter, because as you know, once Ange goes, I'm done, according to some comedian on Twitter today. It's not signed, Dan. It says the board has unanimously decided. We know we now have a new CEO coming in from Arsenal. We know that Donna has left. We know this week that Peter Cherrington has now been moved into an exec role. So, Leon, what does all that mean?
Well, I might be wrong, but wasn't the plan that Donna Cullen was going to leave anyway? Didn't she want to leave a year ago? And he talked her into staying. And that's, that her leaving isn't really that much of a surprise. And then, I mean, there's lots of kind of nonsense on Twitter that Levy's going to go and all this. We see it every summer. He's not going anywhere. There's no way he is going anywhere. He's not going to leave the cash cow. And I think he's got not just the money side of it, but just too much of a control freak to ever really let go. But in terms of the statement, the way I'm reading that is like they're unified, and it was a joint, across the board decision. As a board, we're making this and we're backing it, rather than it all on Levy. Maybe it's that, or maybe he just doesn't want to put his name to it because he knows he's going to get some flack, and it's better as they do it as a collective. I think probably the first one, in my opinion, but it's just a guess, isn't it?
I read it the same. I think what it is he's trying to subtly make the point that Vinny's already involved in footballing decisions, because everyone is asking for Levy to step aside from the footballing side, which we know is not going to happen because he's control freak, Leon says. But I think obviously part of the hiring of Vinny is to have a footballing person on the board. So I think this is a subtle way of implying that Vinny has been involved in that decision.
As an interesting point from our man who was on his way to recovery, Charrington is the man in control of the Lewis Family Trust, just to be clear, so effectively has the most power. So what we know is that this time last year, in the accounts last year and interviews on Bloomberg, Levy said, we are looking for more investment into the club. And this year, he says we have to live sustainably despite the fact that we are in the top 10 revenue earning in the world, and he's the highest paid chairman in the Premier League. So are we actually seeing that the subtlety is that Vinay is someone who's going to come in and actually be allowed to get on with what he's good at doing? Connor, what's your view?
He's always going to be a bit hamstrung by Levy, isn't he? I think it's because I don't think Levy can fully step aside. I think on those other points, point John raises, I think I agree. I think Charrington has got more power than we probably realise, because I do think he's acting on behalf of Lewis. I do think he was probably brought onto the board to help strengthen the board. I think I made this point last time I was on the podcast tonight, which is, I think the board has needed strengthening for a number of years. It was the same three, being Collicott, Levy and Cullen, for basically all of ENIC's reign, when they were a much, much smaller organisation to what Tottenham is today. So it needed strengthening, and it needed people with credentials being added. Charrington has got huge credentials in the investment space. So that made sense. He was added to it. And then I think with Vinay, obviously they're finally bringing someone with some footballing knowledge or who has been involved in football clubs onto the board. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think the most likely scenario, and this is completely personal opinion, is that they get some sort of minority investment, or and Levy stays with some minority investment coming in. Obviously, we all hope for a full sale, but I'm not sure that's going to happen anytime soon. So and I think there's a lot of indicators that is coming with the Charrington appointment, the Vinay appointment, and so that improving the credentials of the board is one. Openly coming out and talking about inward investment. So I do think something might be coming, but who knows when.
And so does this all mean, Jack, with all that's going on, and we're going to move on to the next manager in a minute, when you're next in London, will you be joining the Change for Tottenham protest?
Only if you're there, man. Only if you're there.
I'm dealing with the pitchforks in Australia. And just before we're going to move on to our next manager, good morning to you, Ross. Ross is in Brisbane. So he himself today will be, apparently it's all my fault. And don't worry, Ross, I'm with you there. He'll be listening to his Wonder Stuff records today to get him through the day. So we're now going to move on to who will be the next manager. And Leon, I'm gonna throw this one to you, because I'm the host tonight, and so this is the kind of thing that a good host will do, is deflect away from the host. So Leon, this is for you. Pretend your name's David. David, hit me with your wisdom, mate. Sounds like Ian Jury. How is sacking for Thomas Frank right? Over to you first, Leon, and then I'll come to the others in a second.
Well, the risk of sounding like a broken record, we revert back to Ange's record over the last 18 months. And I think bringing any kind of half competent coach in is an improvement on the manager we've just had in terms of the league results. As to whether, I don't know, what is success at Tottenham? Is it top four? What is it? Like what is success under with the wage bill we've got under this board? Top six? Like, is that top six? Can Thomas Frank
probably
do that?
dropped down to maybe even as far as 7 or 8. We'll see when the next come out, but it may be below 6.
Yeah, so there you go. Like, maybe success is like, top 8. I think Thomas Frank can do that. I think he's a good manager. Is he particularly inspiring? No. But I'm at the point, we've been through so many managers under it. We've tried everything, haven't we? Every single type of manager. And ultimately, it ends up the same way. So I'm kind of hoping for.
Sorry to cut across you, Leon, for a minute, but we haven't tried a Danish manager before.
We haven't tried a Danish manager, so that's the kind of one hope I have with him. I think the way I'm going to, and I think it is Thomas Frank's coming in. The way I'm going to look at this is it's kind of an Eddie Howe type appointment, a kind of solid coach. Seems like a decent guy. We've got some good players there. The squad's lacking. But if he can develop them, something I don't think Ange particularly did on the squad as a whole, if he can develop them, maybe we can kind of kick on a bit. But I think whoever comes in unless it's Stellini. We're not going to fit. We're not going to finish 17th with 22 league games lost. So it's going to be an improvement.
Connor, excited about going Danish?
I am, actually. As excited as I can be, because I caveat it with I'm not sure anything can change that much with the ownership structure. But ignoring that, I think on Frank, look, I see people keep making these comparisons where they're comparing, Frank's league record to Ange's. I would just like to remind everyone that Frank is managing Brentford, right? This is a team who are in the 4th tier of English football in 1998, which is not that long ago, right? They are now a recognised Premier League team, never looking likely to get relegated. And that in itself, and I know people say it's not inspiring, he's not a huge name, but that's a fantastic achievement for a team like Brentford. They're talking about wage bills, they're 19th in the Premier League on wage bill. Their net spend has been the lowest for God knows how many years. I think their gross transfer spend in the last 5 years is about 250 million. Ours, for comparison, was near enough 850 million. So, comparing the job that Frank has done at Brentford to the job that Ange has done at Tottenham is frankly quite, pardon the pun, ridiculous. The one thing I would say about Frank, I agree with a lot of what Leon said. He's a good coach, right? And I think he's comes across a good guy. I think the one thing that makes me hopeful that he could make that step up from a sort of middling or lower team to a club with much bigger expectations is his ability to adapt tactically, and do so in a way that creates goals. So ordinarily, when you look at these managers of lower teams, they're setting up in a low block, and that's their sort of modus operandi, and counter attacking, and that doesn't always adapt well to bigger teams. But I think with Frank, he's moved from playing 3 at the back to going to 4-3-3 mostly this year. He's got the most out of attacking profiles at the club. You had Tony before, and now he's got Visser and Mbeumo, which is a completely different style of attacker. And I think they're in the top 5 or 6 goals in the league. So, I think all of that is actually pretty impressive.
Are you on the Frank bus, Jack?
So I agree with what people said. He's a solid, competent manager who does demonstrate some certain skills. And what he's done with Brentford, bringing them up, is excellent. I mean, there's no question about it. My concern with Frank is I have no ability to parse his skill set versus what I regard as probably one of the best player identification recruitment policies in the Premier League over the last 5 years, bar say maybe Brighton. They have done an unbelievable job. They have a data operation. They have a recruitment strategy. They have a player identification strategy that has brought, they bought Mbeumo and Wissa for granted, they were not in the Premier League at the time, but they identified these players for little money a long time ago and have developed them. They've done a great job of replacing players when they've lost them. They've done just like Brighton. They punched above their weight. My fear is that he's gotten great players that he's done a lot with, and now he might be at Tottenham. Now, we've had a improvement in our recruitment. Parachi and some of the other decisions have been made. We've identified players. I think,
Clement Longley.
Don't you start. Because they found Bearval. Thar's not everyone's cup of tea, but they didn't spend a lot of money on him, and he's still pretty darn young. He's still. You've got Gray. You've got some young players that they've identified in the system. We've got some. Vuskovic is coming through at some point. I don't know about some of the others. Donnelly looks fantastic, but he's still got to step up. We've got a lot of really good young players, which I think a manager like Frank can get a lot out of. But after that, because you still have to get the window this summer right. You got to get the winter window right. You got to get next summer right. And the manager's got to have the tools. And I yet to be convinced that this organization has that sort of well-run organization. Now, maybe the gooner that we've made CEO is going to bring that in. I don't know anything about this guy at all, other than I hope he's that person who only took the job with promise that he would be given free reign over the football side and get the other people out of his way. And then when he learns learns that's not the case, he'll be gone in 2 years. But I mean, that's my biggest concern with any manager we bring in. That's not, again, Klopp, and even Klopp was benefited of some pretty adept recruitment over there at Liverpool. So, I mean, that's my biggest concern with Thomas Frank. I think he's a good guy, good manager, done great work, but he's going to need the tools to make it happen. And so otherwise, my fear is that basically our ceiling now is 6 and our floor is now 12 and no cup runs, and that's kind of boring. But it's better than 17th, I guess, considering they lucked into the Europa League, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, Will is obviously trolling you by saying, Jack, great point. So if you want me to block him with that display of
No, we're inclusive here. We're inclusive on this show, aren't we?
Depends on who's hosting it, to be honest. So,
Fair
Leon,
point.
Jack is saying that our new manager, Thomas the Frank Engine, is only great because of the data or the data, the spreadsheets, and this, that, and the other. There'll be no more Levy and Ken Wright deals at the Ivy, particularly as Ken Wright's no longer with us. Sorry about that. But do you agree with that, or can we not say the point of view that Frank gets these players off the spreadsheet and the data and all of that, but look what he has done to improve those players? Leon.
You can say both. You can say both. I think Jack is correct. Jack is correct in what he's saying. Can I just say before I say anything else? Every time I look at Jack, I just think Mr. Big from Sex and the City. It just kind of, he's like, I can't get it out of my head. They always say any manager is only as good as the recruitment. It's a pretty obvious statement.
Mm-hmm.
And at Tottenham, what it seems is you get maybe one player that you really want, one you kind of want, and then you kind of get some young kind of players that the club want that you might be able to develop and kind of you can sell on. So he is not going to benefit from that spot on recruitment that he had at Brentford. So he's going to be hindered by that, 100%. History shows this to be true. But again, I think he is a better coach and developer of players than Ange. So you're kind of going to hope that the players that we have got, again, with some of the young players coming through, and just hope for God that we bring in one or two half-decent established ones in amongst the crap that we'll likely sign, that it gives him half a chance. Yeah.
So, Connor, if it isn't Frank, and surprisingly at the last minute we get told that the deal couldn't be done because Frank wanted to move his dog and have a kennel at the training ground and Levy didn't agree to it, who would be the second choice?
Well, I think the second choice is Marco Silva, by the sounds of it. Wouldn't be my choice, but I think that's the second choice. I think this is the other context, I suppose, for the decision, and is that there aren't that many inspiring managerial candidates that I think we are capable of getting either. Is there? This is the pond in which we now fish. I think Glasner is obviously off the table. He would be another one that you could say, look.
Why is he off the table now?
I think because he's got a brain, by the sounds of it. He doesn't want to come and work under Levy. No, look, I think with Glasner, I think
Frank if he takes the job.
Yeah, well, the only thing is, I think Frank, to be fair, doesn't have European football this year, and doesn't have, Frank may view it as Big Six jobs don't come up that often, and
which we're not.
They come up more often with us than they should, but they don't come up that often. And so I think he might think, this is a good chance, and I know I can finish higher than 17th. So in that sense, it's easy for him to demonstrate improvement in the league. With Glasner, I think Glasner will think, let's have a run at the Europa with Palace. I think he will. I think he will stay at Palace for at least another year, Glasner, before he decides to go somewhere else. And so I don't think that one it would happen for us.
Well, if Silva comes in,
who
the
else
Tottenham
is there? I'm
job
not
should be
sure.
open next summer again, so he might get his.
Perhaps, yeah.
What about Leon De Zerbi?
No, he kind of reminds me of a budget Conte. Someone else mentioned him to me, but the drama, the hassle, at least with Conte, I mean, not at Tottenham, but you're pretty much guaranteed to win something before he has his meltdown and makes it all about him. De Zerbi under Levy. I'm not saying he's not a good manager, but no, I don't want him. I definitely don't want Marco Silva. Not De Zerbi. No.
And Jack, Rod Hull and Emu would have been a showbiz thing that was very broadly understood in America in the 70s and 80s. Have you heard of Emu?
Sorry, that one's gone past me. I mean,
that's exactly why that's exactly why. So Rod Hull's Emu puppet is second to Frank, i.e. a puppet would be better as an alternative to Frank. And then we have indeed, I think we are going to wrap this up very shortly, but I think that we have covered, this is our third Australian states that we are covering this morning.
Cam.
We've had, this is obviously, we're in New South Wales, we've had Queensland, and Cameron, who is friend and contributor to this channel. Frank is pure sideways, if that. Now, as we all know, Ange is and his family moved to Melbourne from Greece. So Melbourne and Victoria will be particularly anti-Tottenham today, and possibly Cameron and all the other Melburnians might be at my with the pitchforks as well. So we're going to wrap up in a minute, and I'm going to ask you, all three of you, is that leaving aside that night in Bilbao, leaving aside that the fact that Leon has been an Ange undertaker for quite a long time now, and sadly we haven't been joined by the other Ange undertaker, Gibbo. He is on holiday in Rhodes. He would have loved to have turned up at the mortuary to see the body delivered. So I'm asking you, what was your favourite memory of Ange? Something that he did at a press conference, something he did during the game. I want you to have a think about that, because, from my point of view, and I'll if you don't mind, I will kick off. What I liked about Ange is that, first of all, and indulge me here, and I'm giving you time to think, is that as someone who's made Australia their home, and the fact is that seeing football grow in this country for a number of years, which, to be clear, has got nothing to do with me, has been the fact that when that club, as I've talked about 2 years ago, Fool's Gold, Stellini, Paratici band, this, that, and the other, we were in a right old mess. And I knew that an Australian coming into the club, because sporting excellence and sporting culture is so ingrained over here, and what he would bring to that was a breath of fresh air. The fact that he was patronised by the English media was an absolute disgrace, and that Dan Kilpatrick clown thing was a disgrace as well. But what I really liked about Ange, leaving aside, yes, I agree with the decision, and obviously this is officially my last day as a Tottenham supporter since 1977, so I will be selling this today, is the fact that he stood up for our club. He stood up for our club. He had sometimes no one next to him in the press conference, and he was there standing up for our club. And one of my favourite memories of him is then Arsene, I never saw anything, Wenger, turns around mysteriously this year and decides that winning the Europa Cup, he shouldn't get you in the Champions League, when his beloved Arsenal have done that on more than one occasion. So for me, Ange was a bit like Martin Jol for me. Martin Jol, after years of absolute crap, and when he had that bit of biffo, as they say in Australia, with Wenger on the side of the pitch at the library, you knew that Jol stood up for our club and made us feel good about ourselves. So that is my Ange tribute. I've given you all a bit of breathing, thinking time. I can see there's a tear in Connor's eye as I do that emotional thing. So I'm going to go to you, Connor. Do you have one good memory?
Yeah, I've got more than one. But I think my favourite quote of these is Spurs does crazy things to people. Because I think it does. It does to all of us as fans, and it definitely does in the mainstream media. You know, you just use the Wenger example. So yeah, that's my one, I think. But look, I wish him well, and I think he, in some ways, I would have preferred that it was one of those that was sort of pitched as a mutual consent leaving. You know, when he went and he goes with everyone's blessing with a trophy and he deserves some reputation, etc., etc. But I think, yeah, look, it's the right decision to make. But thank you for that night in Bilbao.
To the Ange Undertaker, can you give me at least one good memory?
Yeah, I've got two, but my favourite
Okay.
is the Chelsea away game. So I'm going to mute because the Chelsea away game when Sarr scored and he thought it was a goal and he cupped his hat and his ear at the fans. Then it got disallowed. And then in the interview afterwards, they said, were you doing that at the fans to kind of make a point? And he did this kind of like really fake shock. That's one of my favourite memories. And the high line against Chelsea when we were down to 9 men and we were literally on the halfway line. And everyone said how brave it was. I think I genuinely have a bit of admiration and kind of respect for how, I don't know what the word is for that, but that was kind of peak Ange ball for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I both mine, I guess, what I was thinking about, the Chelsea home game with the 9 men high line, that's without question. It's not one of my favorite, just like, it was such a surreal experience watching this unfold, not being able to believe my eyes, and almost having pulled off. Son buries that chance. Almost just comes so close to almost pulling off a miracle. And the press. I mean, almost every press conference was one of my favorite times, just because I hate watching press. I never watch press conferences with managers because they're pointless. But with him, they weren't. So it was. I mean, regardless, not all of them are brilliant, of course, because most of the results were pretty bad. And he's explaining himself away, but it was fun. And I'll be honest with you, the whole comment about Tottenham, doing things, like you said, Dave, that was my moment where I think he got it. I mean, whether, just because he gets the club doesn't mean he stays there, but he understands the pain that supporters felt, I think, and being constantly attacked and belittled by the media, by their fans, and him being unabashedly sticking up for the club, and unlike previous managers in the previous years before him, clearly proud of being there and happy to be there, which is often is nice. Now you got to put that with results, but it's nice to have someone who truly wants to be there and realizes this might be the pinnacle of my career and acts like it. So those are good qualities, and I am sorry to see it go. I'm not sorry to see the losses possibly in the rearview mirror, but as far as him as a personality, I will miss him.
And so just to finish off on one last story, which was told to me by a friend of mine earlier this week. So a friend of his, and this is now in the Athletic story this week, a friend of a friend was staying on holiday at a hotel in Greece, a mad Tottenham fan. And so Ange and his family are staying at the same hotel. And he very much did not want to disturb Ange and his family after a long, hard season and some family time. And so, and this has been confirmed, this gentleman wrote a heartfelt letter, snuck it under Ange's hotel door, and got a bottle of red wine delivered to him. A few days later, I think before the end of this guy's holiday, it was a bit awkward, but he was still not wanting to disturb his holiday. He gets a tap on the shoulder, and it's Ange. He's got a signed Spurs shirt for him. He has his photo taken with him, and he has a long chat with him. And I think, would you imagine someone like Conte doing that? No. Would you imagine someone like Stellini doing that? but he didn't last that long, did he? So I think that is the mark of him. I'm going to be, as I said, signing off because this is now my very last day as a Tottenham fan. I will be supporting wherever Ange goes next, like all other Australian fans. So all that is left for me to say, I'd like to thank my guests for tonight. Thank you very much, Connor. We talked about you coming back on Tuesday to do transfers and whatever, but we could be talking about a new manager, Leon, the Ange Undertaker. I'm glad to see that the renovations are nearly done, and I'm sure you'll be awarding yourself a Levy bonus at the end of it. So nice to see you. And finally, Jack, who reminds Leon of Mr. Big in Sex and the City, but I always thought he looked like the comedian Rich Hall, and he's always got, and for me, he still has that smooth FM radio voice. So lovely to be on a stream with you again. And I'd just like to thank everyone for your comments, and just a little plug. You can watch the Grumpy's Awards show still up there. And if you're bored during the summer, we've still got the worst Tottenham team of all time. Leon's midfield is an absolute stinker. You can watch that as well. Now, I'm going to make a fumbled attempt to end this stream properly. If I don't, I could be on here for another 3 hours. That's all that's left for me to say is, come on, you Spurs.
Leave it out.
Come on, you Spurs.